policies in Franklin, just low enough to get some. All right, I'm going to excuse me, call to order a special meeting of the Wellington Board of Selectmen. It is Monday, January 31st, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda is present to speak. If anyone is on the line and would like to speak, you can unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and I ask that you limit yourself to 2 minutes. Is there anyone present to speak? Okay, seeing none, excuse me, I will move on. I apologize, I'm looking at multiple screens here. The next item is appointment to the American Rescue Plan Commission. I will make a motion. I will move to appoint Christina Milos, a current member of the Wellington Board of Finance, as a regular member of the Town of Wellington American Rescue Plan Act Commission, effective immediately, expiring once the charge of the committee has completed. Seconded by Jim. Discussion. I will just mention at the Board of Finance meeting this past Thursday, the board voted in favor of Ms. Milos representing the Board of Finance, and I believe her experience makes her a great addition to this commission.
I agree.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a roll call vote.
Aye.
Liza,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye. Motion carries. The next item of business is appointment to the Capital Improvement Program Committee. I will move to appoint Jennifer Goodale as a member of the Capital Improvement Program Committee effective February 1st, 2022 to fill a vacancy expiring December 1st, 2024.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Discussion. I will just mention that Ms. Goodale, although new to Wellington, brings previous experience from her time in Massachusetts, where she lived before her, and I welcome her voice on this important advisory committee. It's by no means required. Jen, I know you're on the line if you had anything you wanted to share.
I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to helping out wherever I can.
Jim or Liza, any discussion? All right, seeing
No.
none. Seeing none, Kelsey, I will call for a roll call vote.
Liza,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Erica,
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you. Both of those committees meet before our next meeting, which is why we added those to tonight's agenda. So move on to the next item, which is discussion of our budget and workshop. So we presented, I presented a budget last week. You can see as it sits before CIP is complete, there is still a significant increase in our budget. We can do this. Is there a preferred method from either selectmen? We can go department by department. We can tackle the salary issue first, the additional salary requests first, or any other particular way anyone would like to go.
I'm okay with department by department. That's fine with me.
All right. Let's start at the top. We'll start with the Selectmen Department. So currently you can see there's about a 3% increase. And again, that number is subject to change once the union contract is ratified and the salary accounts are trued up. So the notable additions in this category are first, I am recommending an increase in the office manager salary from the part-time 30 hours a week to 35 hours a week, which would make that a full-time position. In addition, the CIP salary secretary salary, this year we began paying for the school building committee salary out of this department as well. And I found some savings in order to do that this current fiscal year. I think we need to budget for that next fiscal year. I don't anticipate that committee will be done. So that's $3,500 there. And then the other notable increases, Memorial Day car show. I've had an increase for the cost of flags. And some increased dollars for training and education. Office supplies, we've stayed flat, and advertising, that's a 5-year average I used, which would bring that number up. We are pretty close currently to our budget number. Kelsey, do you have a current number? Do you know where we're at today with advertising?
I can definitely look that up.
Okay, you can see this current last year, for instance, in 2021 we budgeted 1,900, we spent 3,758. So every town meeting we have is an added increase on top of our statutory requirements, as well as Loki wants to be in the video, as well as any advertisement we do for employment. So I think it's important that we bring that number up, and not knowing ever what it is exactly, I chose to go with a 5-year average. All right. Comments, questions, concerns?
I have a quick question for you, Erica.
Yes.
Are you going through everything again line by line, or just?
No, but I wanted to
Getting
point out the
stuff that's different from
notable
last week?
increases we have here.
Okay, now is this going over some of the same things we talked about last week?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, I didn't make any adjustments to it since we met last week.
Okay, have there been any adjustments made to the budget since last week?
Donna, I think just that she's muted, the $10,000 in compensated absences right now.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's right. So the compensated absences fund transfer, which was budgeted for $10,000, I removed it and now it's 0. And that is because the compensated absences fund is fully funded as of June 30th, 2021. So I think we could take a break from funding it for next year.
And that was the main reason for the budget that was sent out today, earlier?
That was the
Yes.
only change.
Okay. Just one comment on that. If it's at all possible, send that out a little bit earlier than 15 minutes before the meeting. That would be extremely helpful for me. Takes me a little while I got to shuffle emails around to someplace I can print. So if you guys help with that, that would be extremely beneficial.
Right. I just want you to know Donna has her hands in about 1,000 different fires and gets it to us certainly as soon as she can. So you got it shortly after we got it. So
And
we
I
will
thank
do
you
our
for that.
best to get them sooner.
That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
Just even like an hour sooner would be perfect.
All right. So if we want to talk about, so the biggest increase, there are two large driving factors in an increase in this budget. And one is the change in the office manager administrative assistant position. And the other is recording secretary money in the CIP SBC line.
So
I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I mean, that's just, business is driving that. So
It is. And Jim, and I'm not sure how much you were aware when Robin left, we really wanted to see kind of, what, as we revamp some things, we're going to the town clerk's office, that weren't happening out of the selectman's office to see if we could start fresh with that position. And we're just finding 35 hours is not enough. I'm sorry, 30 hours is not enough. There are many days Kelsey is not here. And for several years, Liza and I have been a strong proponent of, if you work it, put it on paper, get paid for it. Sometimes that pushes us over budget, but we can't justify what we're asking for if it's not done. And, you know, we want to see the hours people, excuse me, are really putting in. And so, especially right now with COVID and budget season, it's difficult to do this in 30 hours for sure.
I think you made your argument. I think it's very clear to me anyways.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I have similar thoughts on it. I wonder, and I'm sorry, you were asking earlier what we wanted to do, how we wanted to organize the conversation. So I guess the way that I would want to organize the conversation is first anything that's different from last week's budget, because I didn't get I just got home from my full-time job, so, and fed the dogs and sat right down at the computer. So I didn't get a chance to open this until our meeting started. So if there's anything that's very different from last year or last week, rather, I'm sorry. And then I think probably focusing on the areas where we have any specific questions around increases or changes to the budget. I think that makes sense, rather than going again line by line, because I feel like we did that last week already.
Okay.
I have a thought too, Erica, on how to
Yes, Donna.
organize this. And my thought is, as I look down on the cover page, just take the largest increases, start with the very largest one, and then go by that, and then the next largest one, and then the next largest one.
So folks, I think that has us starting at Public Works without a doubt.
Yes, there's an increase of $432,000 in the Public Works budget.
I don't
That
think
right.
Anybody is surprised by that, being the place.
No,
Right, Troy?
so I'm okay if you want to do it that way. I'm okay with it. I don't have any particular. As long as we just get through it, that's all.
You got it. So let's go right to Public Works.
Okay.
Troy, are you ready?
Wait, Troy, there's no anticipation. Just jump right on in, man.
All right. So the biggest, let's start with the salaries the additional salaries requested in Public Works. And then the
Yeah,
next biggest driver is road
Yeah,
maintenance.
let's go with late changes in labor. And
Yeah.
it's this time of year, or when I look at this budget, I'm not anticipating any labor changes. There's a few things here and there. You said work's increased, you know, in the selectman's office. There's
Mhm.
some requirements in a business manager's office of having another body that we can, you know, make sure we have different people doing different functions. Just as a matter of financial safety. I like to look at like the increase in labor in Public Works. There's some things I saw that look good. I mean, I think Troy mentioned in his description somewhere that, you know, he has a laborer that he wants to upgrade to a truck driver. Seems to make sense. You need that coverage. But let's talk about some of the other positions and other areas of growth here, because
Sure. So that's the, if we agree, it's beneficial to move that laborer to a driver. We're paying the upgrade almost every time he works. The other two are adding a full-time laborer and adding a full-time mechanic. Those are the two other driving factors in labor. So Troy, I know you have some highlights on the mechanic position.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's
Go for it.
there's a couple of things. I mean, hopefully this doesn't confuse you, because I probably confused myself a little bit about this, but if it was broken down, so we have a vehicle maintenance budget of 70,000 for the year. As of January 20th, right now, we've spent $21,225.38 fixing, repairing things sent out. Out of that, $13,215.16 was labor cost on top of that.
in addition to the 21K.
Yes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
just for what the parts and pieces cost was 21,000, and then on top of the labor, so the whole entire job. So I don't have the number for that. Hold on, if I can calculate that for what we've spent out for out of services. Right now, the mechanic that comes to our shop, when we call him, he charges $110 an hour to come out. And for whatever he does, if he's there for 2 hours, he gets a $220 plus whatever he does, parts, pieces he needs for the vehicles. So that's where the mechanic comes into play a little bit, you know, that we could be saving some money in-house, because there's not just, you know, repairing things. There's preventative maintenance that needs to be done, oil changes, all that fixing of the vehicles. There's wiring, there's lights, there's all sorts of stuff that happens every day. Hydraulic hoses that blow, certain things like that. Even being in a mechanic's position, he still would go out and snow plow. He would still be doing different things. It wouldn't just be stuck in the garage all the time. We have a new fleet, which is helping out, it seems, a little bit, but there's still things that happen that still break down. Unfortunately, you know, it does, things happen.
So I know with our small crew, Troy, if something, let's use this past weekend storm, and this could happen no matter what they're doing, plowing, paving, chip sealing. If a truck broke down, we first start by pulling in one of our current employees off the road to look at that. So not having a mechanic in-house, I think of, 6 months of the year when we're fighting, serious weather concerns, that takes somebody who's plowing a 15-mile stretch of road off the road to come in to work. And so that's one of the, driving factors here. Troy, talk to me about, I know last week Jim had talked about other towns and kind of going away from that. Do you find that other towns have gone away from it? And if a mechanic came in, what would we need to provide for them as far as tools that we wouldn't have that maybe we didn't budget for? I don't know if I'm frozen or Troy's frozen.
I think Troy's frozen. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Maybe one of you got the numbers. What did he say was the amount paid for the hourly rate last year? 13,000 something?
No, so far this current year, we spent just over 13,000 on the labor
okay.
portion.
On the labor portion of the repairs, yeah.
Yeah.
And 21,000 on the parts portion.
Okay, so since July. July 1st.
Yeah, July 1. Yes.
Okay.
And our budget is 70,000. And if I'm reading the spreadsheet that Troy sent me earlier today to look at, I think we spent about 64,000 of that. Now that could be anything, right? A window break, new tires, or a larger repair than a mechanic could do. Troy, I don't know if you were able to hear my question.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
The whole
So
thing
two
went
things.
blank.
What can you share with us about, to Jim's point last week, are towns moving away from mechanics? And if a mechanic were to come to us, do they come with something? Do we need to provide now additional tools?
No,
What's
most
typical?
mechanics, most diesel mechanics come with their own tools. A lot of them have specialty tools that they buy because they are just strictly diesel mechanics. We're not looking for like your backyard mechanic that's going to do small engine repair. We need a diesel mechanic. So these mechanics are going to come with a scan tool. They're going to come with probably 90% of their own tools to work on these diesel trucks. I've called a few towns around. I know Putnam has a mechanic. They actually have the same road miles as we do. They actually have 12 employees and 1 full-time mechanic. The town of Bolton has a full-time mechanic. Tolland has 2 mechanics. Ashford has a mechanic that's full-time. Mansfield has mechanics. Granted, they're a little bit bigger towns. Some of the smaller towns, Canterbury doesn't have a mechanic. Brooklyn doesn't have a mechanic. They have a guy that's kind of mechanically inclined, sort of kind of like what we do. But they're kind of the garage size equal to us. But I mean, if you go up 1 or 2 guys or a town that's a touch bigger, they have a mechanic.
But Ashford and Bolton are in our DERG, so to speak.
yeah, yeah.
I know
And they have-
Ashford we are typically compared to.
Yeah.
So you don't see anything needed outside of what they would bring to the
No,
table?
I mean, there might be some specialty tool, or something, but most mechanics, in my previous place for the town of Killingly, there was 3 mechanics there. They brought their own tools in. The town didn't provide, really anything with what it was. The town, they did what they had to do, to get the job done. That's their job. A big specialty item, like a lift or something, they're not going to bring with them, but their tools, they're going to have their own.
And you're asking for a mechanic to have a CDL.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Is that unusual to have a mechanic that has a CDL or not? Not really?
No, because they need to take it. They need, that needs to be air brake certified. They need to do all that stuff. So they need to
Okay.
go out and take the truck for a road test when there's an issue.
If we had, let's say we move forward with this and this comes to fruition, and you found somebody qualified that didn't have a CDL, we had a pool that just didn't. I know we recently worked with one of our staff members to get his CDL. We have another employee, same thing. Is that something you see we could do?
Unfortunately,
training?
yes, we could, but as of February 7th, the state changed the rules that anyone that's currently going to go have a CDL has to go to a school now. You can't
Okay.
just do it like drive or train like what we did with our employee. And then he went for the test. Unfortunately, they have to go to school. So, I mean, the town can pay them to go to school, I would suppose, or whatnot, but that's another added cost that's, not into the budget.
Thank you.
So my question is, so there are things that, regardless of the tools that a mechanic would bring, there's still the supplies that would cost money on top of the salary. So, if there's a windshield that's broken, we're buying that windshield. The mechanic doesn't come with the windshield, right? Like, we buy the oil, we buy the pipes and tubes or whatever it is that needs to be repaired. We still are obligated to pay for those, the cost of those supplies. It doesn't sound, unless my math is like super wrong, it doesn't sound like we would financially benefit from having a mechanic versus what we're currently doing.
Well, I think there's more preventative maintenance, more or less, too. You're actually having a mechanic that can actually go through the trucks, that's certified, to knows what he's looking for if there's a problem. Red does a wonderful job for us, but he's not a true mechanic. There's things that are out of his league, where a mechanic would actually be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we need. And getting back to your supplies, you still have to buy stuff. If we're probably buying it cheaper than having somebody come in to service it, you're putting their cost. If they're bringing oil in, they're buying it at their cost. A lot of our stuff comes off a state bid. That guy who comes into our garage isn't buying stuff off a state bid. He's buying it at his cost, and then he's putting his percentage on it, and we're probably actually paying more for parts and pieces than what we could get them ourselves.
So then I think the piece that's missing then is like a little bit more of a concrete justification for that, because when I look at the numbers of what you shared earlier, I don't see the financial justification, right? Like, so if it's 13,000 something dollars that we spent in this year so far, that's about 120 hours that we've had a mechanic do work for us. And then the supplies and parts and pieces are on top of that. But I don't see, so we're already more than halfway through the year. So I don't see that it does benefit us financially to have the mechanic versus hiring, even if we then have the mechanic that we hired or outsourced that work to come in a little bit more to do some preventative maintenance. It still seems like, from the information that we have right now, it's still financially sort of advantageous to be hiring out this work.
That's kind of
I guess.
where I'm going with the same line of thinking here. It's like, if you spent about $13,000 in labor to bring in a mechanic, and for half a year, that's like $26,000 per year. Maybe it's more, but I mean, to just hire a mechanic, we're talking what, at least 50,000 plus maybe benefits, another, let's say another 25. So, I mean, you'd have to have like $75,000 of mechanical labor repair, I think, before you really start seeing a benefit. At least that's where my head is going.
Well, I think we easily have that much money in repairs. We've spent $64,000 so far this year, but all of it, to Liza's point, all of it is not saved. Right? Hiring a mechanic is not going to save all of that money. It is going to
You're
save
gonna buy the
some.
parts anyways, whether you're gonna
Right.
buy the parts.
Right. And so, there's some savings to a point, and there is spending some money to save some money. I think it might take us several years before we start to see a significant savings and what needs to be sent out. And there are still items, even public works shops that have a mechanic, there are certain things that still go out on some of the bigger trucks, something that's warranted on a newer vehicle, excuse me, we're still going to send out to their mechanics, but ideally those are at no cost to us. So, we're kind of weighing, in my mind, two positions, right? If we don't know that we can fully take on the cost of two positions this year, then where can we start and how can we start to phase something in? I don't think this is something that we would be successful in if we went on a part-time basis. I think I'm not sure how many applicants we would get, and we would lessen our pool with someone who was looking for full-time work. But if I weigh this against the laborer position, is there a way to begin to phase in to see what we can get done with more labor? And I give you this, and Troy and I, excuse me, have talked about this a little bit. He would like to see, make no mistake, he sees a benefit to one additional 40-hour-a-week person at the garage with that crew. I offer that we have currently a staff member that's split between the transfer station and public works. So they work part-time at transfer station and part-time at public works and make one FTE. Is that something maybe we could begin to phase in? It would give him, that person works 3 days a week that position is 3 days a week at the transfer station. The second person, if we added 2 days a week at public works and split it similar to the other employee, we get an FTE out of it. And he only gets somebody 2 days a week, but it's two more days of a person than we had before. And it's a way for us to phase in and see what can be done with an additional person. Food for thought from the two of you. Again, make no mistake, Troy would rather see 1 40-hour-a-week person.
I do think that there's justification for more staffing in the department. I don't know that I yet see that the mechanic is the place for that additional staffing. I do see the benefit for having additional crew, road crew, drivers, plow, I think clearly we've seen the need over the last couple of years, especially when it comes to plowing, and we can't get subcontractors anymore. Nobody, we can't pay enough to get people to come to do that work for us. So I absolutely think that there needs to be more labor within that department. I'm just not sold that the mechanic position is the kind of labor that would most benefit us, if that makes sense.
It does. And last year when doing some research on some of our neighboring towns, I was surprised to find that Ashford had a mechanic. They have a 6-person crew, which puts them up over us. And their mechanic is only in the shop when things need to be done. They're not in the shop all the time. And, if we looked at it, a little bit like that, the previous position we had was a laborer technician. So we had someone that had a skill set while not being a licensed mechanic. I think if we had a mechanic in, while they be paid as a mechanic, like any other position, they could be asked to do at the same rate of pay. Another job. And so they would do things when they weren't in the garage. It's one way for us to look at it, as opposed to just, I'm not looking at it as having a mechanic who's just sitting in the garage waiting for something to be worked on. And that way maybe we would get the best of both worlds out of this. We get a mechanic who could work in the shop, show us that savings, and Troy can get some labor out of that as well. Is that typical in other smaller towns? I know some of the larger towns, those mechanics are really just there. They have such a large fleet. You know, it's hard to compare us to a Mansfield or even a Killingly. The amount of trucks they have requires that they're constantly working. Do you see that being viable, Troy? Or am I dreaming?
Well, I think you're getting a different pool of candidates. You know, you can't tell a mechanic that he's going to go weed whack or he's going to go pick up trash and then go work on the truck the next day. I mean, Red was one of those where he did a little bit of everything and he didn't mind it. If you put that out, a lot of people aren't going to, they're mechanics, and that's what they are. They're either a light laborer or a truck driver, an operator, or a mechanic. You just can't tell somebody, you know, that this is what they're gonna, you know, well, when you're done doing that, you're gonna go weed whack and go empty the trash. I don't think you'd find a candidate that's gonna do that, to be honest with you. Not with the skill set of a true diesel mechanic.
I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
So that, I mean, that goes back to, you know, my statement of, you know, what then would benefit the town the most. And I do think, you know, there's two new positions proposed in this budget. I can feel good about advocating for a full-time laborer position and supporting that addition to the budget. But the mechanic, I just can't at this point. I don't see that it would be a cost savings. Even I think even with the preventative work, like I think if we had similar to how we had MCOR come in and do preventative work for us a couple of years ago, they started that process. If we had a contract where, you know, we had somebody come do that for us with all of the machinery at Public Works, I feel like it still wouldn't eclipse supporting a new staff member who's specifically solely a mechanic.
Jim?
I tend to agree with that perspective. I mean, I'd like to see the Public Works focus on Public Works projects. There's tons of other projects. There's some great things you want to do with getting the road, with that road inspection gear and all that. I perhaps maybe tweaking some hours, Erica, as you suggest, might be a good way to start and see if you can see that benefit. Meaning if you put some additional little less hours in a transfer station, a little more hours in Public Works, if you got a little bit of extra labor on that side, if that all benefit from that, and you say, hey, we got extra more done, and you know, we were able to accomplish more things, then you know you got some evidence that, you know, expanding, you know, the labor side of it makes sense. That's kind of where I'm going with it.
I hear what you're both saying. You know, what I suggested before was, you know, in lieu of 2 full-time and maybe a way to get the mechanic, if there isn't you know, support for the mechanic's position, I think we would benefit from 1 full-time, because what I was saying, Jim, was not taking any hours away at the transfer station. That keeps 2 people there, and for safety reasons, I think it's really important that there be 2 people there. Excuse me. And so, you know, maybe we move forward once again. We did this last year. We found ourselves in the same boat of advocating once again, excuse me, for an additional full-time laborer. And that gives us, you know, a little bit more manpower and, you know, really start to see what more can get done. And then, you know, really dig down and look at the number of times our trucks are out unnecessarily, if that would benefit from having someone in-house, because not just having someone to do the work, but the amount of time they're gone and waiting for, you know, someone else to get to them adds to downtime with our fleet. So I think what I'm hearing is right now we're not ready to move forward with a laborer and a mechanic full-time. But Liza, if I heard you correctly, you support adding a laborer position.
That is correct.
Okay. And Jim, would you, if we were to, excuse me, add an additional 40-hour-a-week laborer position?
I would consider that, yeah.
Okay.
I just have a hard time getting my head around a mechanic.
Okay.
I have a hard time growing our staffing as it is. I mean, this is a tough year. There's a lot of commodity prices going up. We were told about the emerald ash borers or the gypsy moths or whatever ravaging our trees. There's a big chunk of cash that needs to be spent there on tree removal for safety. There's a lot of other needs that seem higher in priority on that list in my mind right now.
Well, while I agree with you, I will add that every one of those needs a body and needs help. And all those trees coming down, all they do is take them down, drop them. We need a crew to come by and pick them up and clean them up. So, so I think I'm hearing, yes, we agree to upgrade the current laborer we have to a driver position, which brings us to 2 full-time drivers.
I
And
think
then,
that's a no-brainer on that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't start, excuse me, I don't think it's been a full fiscal year he's been in that position. So it's hard for me to tell you what the dollars would be with all of the upgrades. We'll get a pretty good estimation of where we are and try to show you that next week. And then adding 1 full-time laborer, and for now, pressing pause on the mechanic. Okay. Apologize, I'm gonna skip screens here to go back to. All right. Now if we go back to some other big increases that tackles the staffing portion of Public Works. The other large increases, Troy, you're asking for $15,000 more in vehicle maintenance. I think without a mechanic, that seems to be a no-brainer. Parts. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in increases in
The oil has gone up. I mean, just even the littlest parts. I mean, windshield wipers have gone up from Napa. I mean, bolts have gone up. It's the cutting edges for the plows. Those have gone up. Any steel product, a petroleum product, it's gone up, unfortunately. Tires, just to put a set of tires on the back of a truck is $3,000. It's, unfortunately, and those are, we have to follow DOT with the tire depth and stuff like that. We can't run bald tires on a vehicle. So
the mowing addition? It's not much, but that's the result of the current contract we have in place.
yeah,
If
well,
I'm
that
correct.
mowing wouldn't,
But
I mean,
that's, so that's, you're asking for more in mowing as well.
yeah,
But
no,
that's
you can
because
take
of the
that
current
out.
contract.
The current contract. Well, no,
We can't.
we can't go. Remember we talked
Right.
about that. We can't take that. So that can be cut.
But
to
no,
the
that's what I'm
same.
saying. You've asked for additional, but because it's last year when
It's-
we budgeted, just so the two of you know,
Yes.
we did not have the current mowing contract in place. It is in place now. So this number, $8,500, which is $1,500 increase, reflects our portion of the current contract. So if we're going to cut, that's not where we cut. We'd be cutting ourselves short. All right, road maintenance, you're looking at another $11,000.
Yeah, I
and
think
road
most
maintenance.
likely, and that's going to be used for guardrails around town. There's some spots the wooden poles have destroyed, and I mean that's still not a lot of money. Guardrail is extremely expensive. So, but there's a few spots that need some attention there, and you can't put up the wooden posts anymore. So the guardrail needs to be added. So that's.
All right. And tree
Unfortunately.
removal. Last year you came to us with a big increase for tree removal. This year you're asking for another $50,000. Liza and Jim, I have nothing but support for this. We have spent, we're hovering close to 70,000 so far this year in our $50,000 budget for tree removal. And we know just one road we were quoted, Troy, was it around $45,000?
Yeah, yeah, one road. Yep.
Now, no, never mind. Thought came and went. Liza or Jim, any comments about tree removal?
No, not at all. I mean, it's not surprising. We had gypsy moths one year, we had a drought last year, we had emerald ash borer some other year in between, so
No.
yeah, it's gonna cost money to get that straightened out. And I see other items on the list that seem to be commodity related, like, diesel. Gas is going up, so we see that. So, everything else oil related, like as Troy was saying, tires and all that.
Yeah, I'll tell you the diesel right now, we haven't locked into a price as of yet. With the town that includes the school as well. Because the current price, the last time Donna asked us to lock in, Phil and I felt like we could wait it out a little bit. We had a really, really good price this current fiscal year. So I think just about, excuse me, anything is going to see a big swing for us. We're not going to pay $1.63, $1.64.
No, I don't think so.
No, but we just weren't comfortable locking in at $2.50. But that's what we budgeted at, and we're hoping if we can come down a little, we can save a little.
When do we have to make a decision on that?
There isn't a date, Donna, correct me, there's no date in place where we have to lock in, but we've never not locked in a price.
That's right.
Okay.
So
Tim,
we
can I
can
just-
get the new price. Yes, Troy.
Can I, with the oil, I just want to, last year at this time, I bought 2 55-gallon drums of hydraulic oil and a 55-gallon drum of motor oil, and it was $1,500. This year it was $4,700. So that's the cost of how much things have gone up. It's just, we need it. We blow a hydraulic hose. It's the wintertime. Things happen, especially
Yep.
with hydraulic oil. So that's unfortunate, but somewhere it's got to take a hit.
And these are the kind of things that I look at, like, there's no way around that. You've got to buy the hydraulic oil. You got to buy the barrels of motor oil. You got to buy tires to pass your DOT inspections and all that. And I'm looking at, I don't have too many knobs to twist, right? So that's why I'm looking at mechanic and laborer. I'm thinking, like, as a last resort, I want to hire a laborer, and even a last resort, I want to even hire a mechanic. Because I know you need all those other things first.
Exactly. We can say, okay, with the mechanic, if that's where it goes, understand that. The labor position, I think an extra body, it means a lot. It truly does. I've asked for that the last 3 years I've been here. It means a lot. It truly does. I mean, it's especially with these big snowstorms we just had. I mean, there's times where you can use that, in the summertime, it's hard. The guys don't take time in the wintertime. And then all of a sudden, as soon as nice weather comes, when things need to get done, I got one guy on vacation. Then the next week, the other guy is out. It's hard to do with, it goes with 4 guys, 3 guys. My whole crew goes and sweeps. So for 3 months, and I got to grade the roads in the springtime, then we're down, with when the guy from the transfer station comes in to help out 2 days a week. It's a hard where that body we could be doing a little bit more where things needed with that body.
All right, let's look into the snow portion of the budget. Oops. So
big one
both
there is
the
this-
public works overtime and the contract overtime, so the first 2 lines there, just for both of you, those dollars represent a 5-year average. So they look like arbitrary increases, but we did a 5-year average of what we've spent. And the current contractor is at a higher hourly rate than in previous years. And then the other big one that jumps off the page at all of us is salt.
And that the state's going to eventually make you mandatory that you're going to use pure salt. And then they're getting away from the sand. The MS4 there, the town's going to get in trouble one of these days using still sand. Unfortunately, the state is pushed to make pure salt for everyone. And the salt prices have gone up literally $30 a ton from last year. That's off a state contract bid price.
If either of you, anyone has been out in the last 2 days, you can see what the effect of salt has done on our roads after a near blizzard. We weren't quite a blizzard. I'll use my air quotes.
It doesn't work very well, actually, when it gets really cold. So that's when you wish you
That
had
is
a little
true.
sand, you know?
And we do.
Yeah, there's sand mixed in with it. The sand kind of takes the effectiveness away being mixed. That's the problem,
Yeah.
because the chemical that's in the salt, the sand's drawing it out. Where if it was just pure salt, that chemical is going to be, once it hits the road, it stays on the road. So there is a little bit, if it snows on Friday, or I would use just pure treated salt, you would notice a big difference even without the sand, because it's that chemical it's working, it's sitting on the road versus the sand is actually taking it away.
I will tell you, I think I've made this offer to you before. Oftentimes you'll see me go out with Troy, not because I am monitoring what he does. I like to see what they're doing. Again, kind of hands-on with everyone in the town office building, but Public Works is pretty separate. So when they're out there in the winter time, it's a good time to really get out and see what the products he's talking about do on the roads and how their trucks run. And so it's enlightening. So if either of you are ever interested in Troy, is willing to take you up on it. Taking a ride with them during a storm is really, it's educational. I never thought I knew as much as I do about snow plowing, salt and sand, cutting edges, etc. All right, and then the next big chunk in this budget is the chip seal program, which Troy and I have recommended renaming to road maintenance. So in the current way we chip seal, the first two items, the truck rental and the oiler, roller, and chipper, are not something we spend money on. So instead of allocating dollars to those line items and using them for other parts, Troy has reconfigured the cost so that it is more accurate. And I want to make sure I excuse me, speak to it correctly. So we're recommending the next three items. There'd be three items that budget is made up of, and it be chip seal, asphalt, and crack seal. So there were some reductions earlier in the budget for asphalt and chip seal, and all put into one line item. So the asphalt and the crack seal would be in this program, and Troy's asked for increased dollars in asphalt and crack seal. The stone was made up of the first three items of chip seal. So although you see $35,000 increase, it was those three lines together that made that $1 amount. Does that make sense to you both?
Yeah, I think so. So
Yeah.
chip seal is just, it's everything that's involved with chip sealing.
But it's more than just chip seal. So if we were to do some pavement on a road, an asphalt on a road, then it would come out of this. So
So
that's
if
why
we're
the
doing some
recommendation is
shimming or something like
broadening the
that?
name of it. Yes, that broadening the name outside of just chip seal. So it's our road maintenance program.
So if we're gonna chip seal a road, that includes all the costs in that associated with that, including shimming and recrowning, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of each one just saying, say like 1 year, say this year, we're going to do, we're not going to chip seal that much, but we're going to shim quite a bit of roads for next year. So say we'll take $50,000 and shim the roads. Next spring, we'll come in and do, $200,000 worth of chip seal instead of just chip sealing over the roads and not actually fixing the roads. There's not enough money in there to actually, we just chip seal $115,000 a year and we use $145,000 in pavement a year. But like $145,000 can pave literally, not even 1,000 feet. So we might just say next year, we're not going to chip seal that much. And we might fix one road and we might put $250,000 into actually asphalt, reclaiming a road or whatever, and do $50,000 in chip seal. That's where it is instead of just being divided like that. That's where I'm asking.
And asphalt then is just asphalt, just
yes,
paving?
as it just paving is asphalt. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And does that, and shimming doesn't count as asphalt?
It would be. Shimming is just you've got the road already. You're taking
recrowning. Yeah.
Recrown. Exactly. So that's all.
Okay, so I got it now. So asphalting is everything, including you do your aprons, your recrown, your that shimming process.
Everything.
That's asphalt.
That's yes.
Sealing is just pouring the goo down and put the chip stones down.
That's exactly it. That's all it is.
And crack sealing, I know what that is because guys were in front of my house for a few days and they were doing that. So yeah. I get that. Okay, thank you.
And you're
Yeah, I
gonna,
got it. You break it out as something more, what actually is being done.
is being done. Yeah, and you're gonna do your crack seal, your chip seal, and then that's how that will go. Whatever you're gonna crack seal, because we're actually looking to chip seal your area next year, Jim. So we're gonna be in your neck of the woods.
Yuck.
So
We all don't like it.
nobody does. No one wants to leave their house and put their car on the road. So some of those increases, there are still significant dollar increases in these requests within the asphalt and the crack seal. But a portion of it came from previous line items. And I will tell you $15,000 of asphalt and $7,000 of crack seal. So except for those amounts, the rest of the asphalt and crack seal is a new increase request to be able to tackle the roads that need done next year. Troy, can you give us an idea of what the plan for next year is? Or beginning
I
of
do
July
have
1?
it, but I don't have it like, I don't
With
have
you?
it in front of me.
Okay.
I have a whole list of
Okay.
stuff.
Sure.
I was supposed to print it out. Michelle typed it up for me and I don't have it. So I apologize, but I do have a
We
list
know
of what
Laurel
roads-
Drive is one of them.
Yes, of what will be chip sealed. Yeah.
Jim, my year was last year and I begged them not to do it. It didn't work.
Yeah, you can never
Alright.
clean your car for months afterwards, so.
Pretty much.
Those things. What you gotta do to keep the roads in good shape, right?
Yeah.
I
The
think
price
it's fairly
we
straight.
pay.
I think this is
And
fairly straightforward here. I mean, we touched upon the real big budget movers here. A lot of the stuff you can't touch, they're commodity driven, like salt, the diesel and all that stuff. I get what's going on with the pavement. We're moving the budget line items around so it makes sense of what we're actually doing. I guess I don't have any more questions. On
So-
public work anyways.
It looks like so far, all we've done is reduce this by one full-time mechanic position. Thus far. I'm not saying we have to, I'm just trying to capture where we're at. As Donna, I can see is,
Accurate summary of
Peter's
what
been
we've
noting.
discussed.
Hmm?
I said, I think that's an accurate summary of what we've
Okay.
Yeah.
discussed.
Yes,
all right.
this
We,
point.
at this point. Okay, let's, can we talk about, while Jenny is here with us, her budget is approved within the selectmen's budget, but it is presented combined in our budget, but separate to Board of Finance, and she will go before the Board of Finance on this Thursday night. So if anyone's not opposed, I'd like us to be able to talk about her budget. She had some significant increases in that, and you'll see that under 513 transfer out to Human Services. So there's two big things that were asked here. Jenny's asking for an increase in her salary. And not only is there a need to bring that salary in line with the work that she does, COVID has made it very clear that there is more work on that department. And our vulnerable population outside of just our senior population. You add the seniors onto that. The difference she's made moving her office to the senior center, the timing couldn't have been better since the individual they had that worked at the senior center for many years has chosen to retire at the ripe age of, is she 95, Jenny? 96?
Yes, 95. She'll be 96 this year.
And volunteered
Correct.
for about 30 hours a week at the senior center. Her work was invaluable. Jean will be missed for sure, but there's a gap there. And I think we'd all be hard pressed to find a senior that wants to volunteer to work at the senior center 30 hours a week, those open hours. But with that said, with Jenny's office there, you can see we can't keep her there and expect her to only do human services and not coincide with that population. They're coming in and they have questions for her. But what it shows is that there's nobody working on behalf of the seniors in the senior center. So the request is that we increase the assistant position, excuse me, to part-time. I'm sorry, an increased part-time position that would be 30 hours a week and would be split between senior center and 25 hours at senior center and 5 hours a week with Jenny. But there's plenty of opportunity to overlap. Jenny, talk to me about how we need to develop a job description.
Yes.
For, just so you're aware. Jenny's given it a rough go at it, but we need to really dig into that. Jenny, talk to me about what you see that person doing at the senior center.
A lot. Oh my goodness. So, answering the phone, helping people when they come, developing and implementing new programs with the seniors, having people come out and do things like foot clinics and ear clinics and things like that that we used to have but don't have anymore. Maybe getting like a senior health fair. I see that person doing a lot of things to really invigorate the senior center, but at the same time not taking it away from the seniors altogether and working with them to create an environment that everybody feels welcome and is excited to be a part of.
And so that you both know, I struggled with, does this position belong here or in the senior center budget? But the senior center is managed by Wellington Seniors Inc., which is an independent organization. And I thought the best place for this person was under human services, because they would need to answer to someone, and Jenny would be that supervisor in that role. So that's why it's here in human services and not in the senior center budget.
Right. And it also makes sense if they'll be doing senior services, such as helping them with Medicare and things like that as well.
Thank you, Jenny, for sending that email the other day with some more information and justifications for the requested increases. I think one of the questions that I have is about the degree to which you think the pandemic has influenced your increase in work hours, because one of the things that I think we should consider is using some of the ARPA funds for the increased staffing needs as a result of the pandemic. At the same time, I want to be sensitive to whether or not you think this level of work is going to be sustained well beyond the pandemic, because we'll need to set ourselves up to prepare to pick up the dollars if we are able to allocate some of this additional funding for staffing to ARPA. Will we then need to figure out in 2026, when all of that money is spent, how to pick that up? 2024?
It has to be allocated by 2024.
Right,
We
but
have
spent
until
by-
2026 to spend. So there's some gray
Right.
area on the employment portion, if it can go past
Okay.
24 in that category.
Gotcha. Okay, well, in any event, so then for the next 2 years, we can cover an increased salary on ARPA funds. Is it something that you would envision would need to pick up, like the additional scope of work that you've been doing would need to be picked up beyond that time frame?
That's an interesting question. I really think that the long-term economic fallout is just going to keep on going. People have depleted their savings. Some people have nothing left. Some people who've never been in the system before are now in it. And getting out of the system is hard, and it takes time, and it takes resources, and it takes information. And my department has those tools to help our residents.
Liza, as you spoke, I was finishing my notes in front of me that said ARPA funded year one. So my thought was, if we could work it into our budget, so maybe ask ARPA to fund 3/4 of it in this next year, and then half of it in the second year, and then we pick it up. So we slowly increase into the human services budget, as opposed to one big bam. As a way to do that. I think asking ARPA to fund the entire needs of that department would probably be more than appropriate use of those funds in year one. But if we're talking about staffing, if we ease it in so that we can absorb some of the costs now and start to see those minimal increases, phase it in. Jim, your thoughts?
I'm not denying there's a need, and I'm just not sure that ARPA's funds are the right thing to use. I mean, there's a lot of other needs in the town that you have to weigh. You have somebody looking for an extra ambulance and all that. It's just, which is probably more appropriate for an ARPA fund. It's a one-time shot. But you're going to handle these ARPA funds just like CIP funds. You know, there's only so much available. You're going to look at all the needs, everything, and you're going to prioritize it. And those one-time shots, like like ambulances and equipment, you know, those are easier to deal with. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying there isn't a need and you shouldn't deal with this. I'm just saying using the ARPA funds for those one-time things seem most appropriate. That's all. But I do agree with Jenny's assessment. This there's a lot of people that are really hurting. We're seeing that everywhere, all over the news in Connecticut. And I'm not surprised that she says I've seen a big uptake in the amount of effort, the demands that she has from people. So.
Yeah, I agree. What I don't want us to do is start using ARPA for things that we're keeping in our budget year over year. But if there's one area where we're going to do that, this is the area. This is what these dollars were meant for. We're responding to the COVID-19 pandemic specifically, and the incredible increase of demand in that department, including our seniors, is a direct result of COVID. So that's why I don't recommend using all of it, because we are going to need to find a way to fund this moving forward. I don't see it as something that will go away, because we're talking about not an increase in Jenny's assistant, but an increase in running in the senior center. And so I think using ARPA funds to phase the town into fully funding that is an appropriate use of those funds. This is what these funds were used for.
Exactly. There's a specific line item for that in the document outlining what ARPA funds are to be used for. So I think it's exactly what the intended use of ARPA is.
Yes, I mean, if we had a hospital here in town and some larger facilities, we'd be looking at those kinds of medical needs. But this is where it hits. COVID has hit us full on, and so I couldn't think of a better use of that. Again, using it to phase in to something that we're going to need to fully fund, and it takes the burden off a budget in 1 year. And while we have those funds, I think it's completely appropriate. So Jenny, what I would say is that's a good discussion to have at Board of Finance when and if we finish this budget and approve it as it stands. That's what I'll be talking about if we were to approve based on this conversation. Is let's see where we want to budget. We'd have to get funds from ARPA before we took it out of the budget. In that process is really beginning discussions. You're part of that group, and these are some of the things that I brought up last week that we may need to talk about sooner, not later, in ARPA. And I think this is a perfect use of those funds. The other increase, not just the assistant, but was also Jenny's increase. Thoughts about the dollar amount there? Any recommendations? Excuse me.
Jenny, could you talk about your certifications? I assume that you have to be certified to do what you do.
Yes, so I have an undergraduate degree in social and criminal justice. I have a master's degree in public administration, and I've worked in social services since 2006. So let's do the math. That's 16 years.
Been doing it for a while.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yep. I'm just curious, is there, I'm hearing about other departments and they have various certifications for things. And forgive my ignorance for just asking this. I just don't know.
No,
are there
not-
certifications required for somebody doing social services? I mean, clearly
No.
you got the college and experience, but I'm just curious.
In terms of what we offer in Wellington, no. If there were like therapeutic services or any kind of clinical services offered through the town, then I would necessarily need to have those kind of certifications.
Okay.
However, since we don't do that, I have exactly what I need to do what I'm doing.
Okay.
Just for
I'm
instance,
just asking questions. That's all. Thank you.
yeah,
Nope,
that's
that's
great.
fine.
Some of the bigger towns have social workers, so she would, you'd need education there in social work, or if we had some kind of counseling program. But Jenny works with a lot of other programs to refer our residents into these programs. And then she's asked for a small stipend, a small phone stipend, cell phone stipend. That is a new ask. So the bulk of it is revolved around salary.
To the
And
line
then
item, the
and then a-
specific line item for salary, because I am scanning and I'm not finding it quickly.
Yeah, the only thing I see at the very end, towards the very last of the handout,
So if you look at
it just
Jenny's
says transfer out,
spreadsheet,
right?
right, but you got a spreadsheet from Jenny, from her budget. It works a little bit different than the others. It's a grant program to that department. And so the breakdown was in your original packet,
Okay. I found it.
along with some other items.
Thank you. That's why I was not seeing it in the.
You're welcome. And so what
initial
you don't
budget.
see reflected here is if we increase that assistance, there are no insurance benefits currently, and that would put them over the threshold for insurance benefits. So we would move into part-time benefits at that point. It was a very part-time, but below the threshold for needing benefits. So that would be reflected in the benefits line item, not in Jenny's budget. So the increase from the general fund in human services this year would be an increase of $19,912. And the increase in the assistant salary is roughly 17,000, and the increase in the director salary is about just shy of $3,200.
I see that.
And Jenny, you were proposing that at $15 an hour, correct?
Yes, because it's just a matter of time before minimum wage goes up and I'll have to bump up my assistant anyway.
Hey, Jim, I think there have been a couple of times you've tried to say something, but it's very muffled and I couldn't hear you.
Anybody else hearing that as well?
I can.
Or not hearing me?
I can hear you now, but like a couple of times your volume has gone out. So I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that you weren't trying to say something and
No, I'm
Getting-
gonna make
getting
sure that
blocked.
I'm not wandering away from my microphone. How about that?
yeah.
I want to make sure we hear you. Okay, so based on our discussion, I'm not hearing any current cuts recommended to human services.
I think, no, I think one of the things that I do want to we have to think about is the salary increase, especially as it's compared to what we do for other departments. So unless, and I think, Jenny, you were talking about this a little bit in your letter, that the work requirements have gone up. So, I guess, so we should think about, are there additional hours that are needed? And I'm assuming that's yes, there's additional hours that you can or should be tallying in your time card. But I do think we just have to contextualize any request for a raise with one department, for one department head with all the others out of, equity.
So currently that position is 35 hours a week and it's salaried. I will tell you that there are probably plenty of times Jenny puts in more than the 35 hours, again, because it is a salary position. And she's met the needs of her department, and it fluctuates. some weeks more than others. It's been some times when she's had to have a Saturday program that can often add to those hours. And then if we make this increase, my recommendation would be this be the increase as opposed to the smaller incremental increase that we might give across the board, that not on top of that, this be the increase to go with that department, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yes, it's challenging to have the conversation if we're not able to yet talk about the union agreement and
Correct.
how we might align anything up with any of that. So
Mhm.
I think we just do need to at some point have that discussion about what we're doing across the board for the department heads who are not in the union. And it's it's just hard to have that
Right.
conversation now.
The conversation we can have, Liza, without using actual numbers is, do we want to give our departments, the three of us were in the negotiation, right? So we're aware of what the numbers, although we can't speak to anything. Do we want to continue the practice of the same increase to our non-union staff that our union staff gets? And I will tell you that the numbers that we've used are using that assumption. So that has been the practice. And in this particular case, it might be more than that. And so it would be a one-time increase in that department. But again, we might have the opportunity to decrease that ask this year if we ask for some of it to be funded from ARPA. So if there's a way to save in the current fiscal year, by maybe say, only a quarter of it be in this budget and the rest of it be in ARPA funds. That would be my recommendation.
That sounds fair. And I do, for the general concept, yes, I would support the same increases for the department heads and the non-union staff as we hopefully will agree upon and sign for the union.
Yeah, same.
And would you both support the concept of asking, going into this with a quarter of this budget and on this budget and 3/4 ask from ARPA? Okay. So Jenny, what I would say is, in your discussion and your presentation on Thursday, that the full amount, I would say, leave in your budget currently, but that we are entertaining a portion of it coming from ARPA, and that adjustment can be made. Certainly the conversation has to happen at the ARP committee before we could say yes, but that would be a good ask. So there's a potential to bring those two salary items down to just a quarter of the ask.
Okay.
And then we could incrementally build it into the operating budget, still making the change, just getting the dollars from somewhere off budget.
Okay. Thank you all for considering. I appreciate
you.
it. It was a hard thing to ask for, but I really think that it's needed, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It is, and there's no doubt in my mind that the increase in that department has been significant and steady.
And steady, yes.
Yeah, we've seen some slight dips, but never dips below what we were pre-COVID. Dips for maybe
Right.
some high points around the holidays and such, but the need is significant out there. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny, if you want to go spend the rest of your evening with your
Thank you.
birthday
I
girl.
definitely will. I
Tell her we said
appreciate
happy
it. Thanks.
birthday.
I will. Thanks.
All right, she has a birthday girl at home, so we will let her
Oh,
go.
well, happy birthday to the birthday girl. I have a quick question about timing of the meeting.
Yes,
Do we have an end time for tonight, or are we going until we're done?
we can go until you both feel we've moved forward enough. Typically,
Okay.
we have a shorter time because we've got a selectmen's meeting after. We don't have one today. Next Monday, we will be short on time. We will only have an hour to discuss.
Okay.
I'm free to go. I mean, I can go longer. I don't have any.
Okay.
I'm okay. It's okay with me.
I can't do too much longer. I do
Okay.
have another commitment. So
Okay.
So I just wanted to, like, is there anything that we should prioritize for the next 15 minutes before I do need to hop off?
Yeah, let's look at a couple of the other staffing things we've talked about. Let's go into the revenue collector budget request. And the increase in the department head salary here. And we talked about a little bit last week. There is, excuse me, a significant the hourly salary. If we break down our current department head is salary at 35 hours a week. If we were to break that down into roughly 35 hours, there are times where, you know, like other department heads, they need to work more than that because in the salary position, we work until it gets done. If we break those 35 hours down hourly in this next fiscal year, our department head will be making less per hour than the 18-hour-a-week assistant. Yes, Ms. Clausen,
Wow.
sorry.
So that actually started this year as of February 8th. This fiscal year, her hourly wage has been more than mine. I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I'll tell you that one of the big issues with that, folks, is that there are steps built into the union collective bargaining agreement. Our departments don't have any steps. So when someone starts new, they start at one place, and then we typically give the same increase for our non-union that we have given our union. So they're not increasing at the same rates as the positions they supervise. So, you know, your first year, you're going up each year. There's 3 steps in that contract, while our department head isn't moving any steps. So not moving at the same rate. She will be officially certified in April. She has to be in the position for 3 years. She has passed all of the certification requirements. Now we're just waiting out the time requirement there. I could tell you her work, in my estimation, absolutely warrants the adjustment that's being asked for. She's gone over budget every year, including what we thought would be some pretty dark times. So as you can see, she's there rolling receipts from taxes she's been feverishly collecting today here as we get to the end. And we did some comparisons. She did some on her own and presented them to me, and I did some work with CCM in surrounding towns looking at salary. And this would still be on the low end of someone in this position in like size towns to Wellington. So this would be another that would be one flat increase, not an increase on top of the typical increase.
I think the increase is reasonable with the certification and the experience and all that, and it's so very important to get, you know, have an experienced, you know, tax collector, and you know, we've seen what that can do for us. I mean, it could drive you to beyond the 99%. You know, you can go very close to 100% or more than 100% collection rates. I think that's what you were talking about when you said driving the budget. It's beyond that. They can go beyond that 100% point. So you want, and it takes years to develop that level of skill set and all that. So I you know, here's I see her. She put a lot of effort into her training and educating herself, and she's sticking to it. You know, I think, you know, you have to pay for good people. So I think, you know, I'm not opposed to paying people for what they're worth. I mean, that's you know, any smart business person does that. So, you know, in this particular case, as many of the specific examples we brought up, it makes sense. It costs the town a lot of money to constantly rehire and look for people. And we, you don't want that, particularly in your department leaders. So you need that experience, you need that education, you need that training. So it's another example here.
Retaining staff is incredibly important and in showing their value. I can tell you that, we had posted another position in our finance office. She could have taken a downgraded position and made more per hour within the building. And so at some point, if we want to see people stay with us and grow with us, I think it's important that we show them that.
So this is
And
where I
we've
am.
had that conversation. Sorry, Jim. We've had that
Oh, it's okay.
conversation the last couple of years at budget season. That we are behind in terms of the sort of the salary scale for most of our positions. We're way far behind where our neighboring towns of similar size and scope. And we've got to catch up, or as Eric and I have been talking about for the last couple of years, we're going to continually be the training ground, right? People will come to Willington to get trained. Once they get trained, they'll
Right. You
find a
don't
position
want
that pays more.
you don't want to be that training ground, and you don't
Right.
want to be that high turnover place, because you just waste time on the
Exactly.
management side of it. But and that's why I'm very opposed to just hiring people willy-nilly, just like expanding. I'd rather pay the good people we have, appropriately first, and then focus on, if we think there's a real need to grow. I mean, that's why I'm fighting against the new hires, so to speak. I don't think this is the time to be bringing on additional bodies. I'm sorry, I'm just, Public Works was an easy target and all that, but I mean, it doesn't seem to make sense to me to bring on extra bodies there at this point in time. But it makes sense where if people have worked hard and increased their education, and and you don't want that turnover in your department leaders, you got to do something there. And it looks like we're taking steps. I mean, I've looked at some of these salaries myself. They're in the range that were being proposed. It's not if people are looking and wondering, are they way out of whack? They're not way out of whack. They're right in the range.
The new proposals, the increase.
The new proposals,
yes,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've been low for a very long time.
We're low, and we're always going to be low. We're always going to be lower, but you don't want to be so low that you're out of the range altogether either. So
Right. And when we're so low that we're asking our department heads to have many more responsibilities and be paid less than those that they supervise to do so, is a little bit insulting at some point. And then we will really struggle to retain staff. And that not only does it take time on the management side, Jim, it reflects with our residents and the service they're able to obtain when they come to town hall. And there aren't many departments where I could justify increasing the staff. That we have enough work for the folks that we have there for the most part, except Public Works. You'll always tell me, I encourage you to spend some more time with Public Works, and you'll know why year over year Troy's asked for more people. So all right, so those were the other big drivers in the revenue departments. They're smaller numbers, although larger percentages were based off of the services, the contracted services that we get. And then in the supply line item, needing 2 new check scanners. So next year we would see that supply drop down by that $750. We wouldn't need new scanners every year. They should last us. We hope at least 5 years, probably more. All right, so while we're doing good work, we're not making good headway in decreasing this budget. I'm hearing from this conversation that so far there is support for the recommended increases in the revenue department budget.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Liza, do you need to go by 7 or are you good till 7:30? You tell us.
7. Yeah, I got 5
7,
minutes.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I apologize.
right,
I budgeted an hour because usually these
Yeah.
meetings are an hour. So,
For someone who had to stop to cough every couple of minutes, I'd be okay with that. let's then, I have it up on my page, let's talk about the town clerk, not significant increase, but $8,000. Those salaries really are just being trued up to the people that are in there. It looks like a large increase in the town clerk salary. That is only reflective of the actual person that's sitting there. The last year's budget was not reflective of the current staff member, so it's truing that up. And then there was one significant increase in excuse me, the purchase services, and that was to purchase a grantor grantee book, permanent record book that would be in the vault and something that is necessary. Robin, did I say that right? A grantor grantee book. Okay. And so that's a land record book that we're required to have. Do we have one currently? I can't hear you.
Am I unmuted?
That's okay.
Sorry.
Yes. Do we have a book currently?
We do. We have them for every year. I think they go like every 7 years or every 10 years. And I think it is a requirement. However, if you need to cut, I actually mentioned that when I brought the salary as a draft. If we needed to cut that, we could, and I might be able to get a grant for that, my preservation grant. I mean, we've waited this long, it's been 10 years. I can certainly put that in for next year's grant. So
would you be
if you wanna
cutting
cut
yourself
that-
off from, I'm sorry, would you be cutting yourself off from something else you wanted to do with the preservation grant? You've said it's, we've waited 10 years to update this book.
To be honest with you, I mean, there's always things we can do in there, but this is a needed thing, and I would still have money left over to do 2 projects because the books would be about $3,500. So I'd still have $2,000 to play with for a smaller project. So I would not mind taking one for the team.
Well, we appreciate every dollar amount that you offer up, so.
I
So
think,
if I-
I mean,
I think
I
the
know
Board of
there's not
Finance would
many co-
appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, I mean, we're looking at what really can you cut. So that is not, it'll be done. It's just won't be done right away, and it's not life or death. We do have something by law. We're supposed to have something. We do have it. It's clipped in a binder. It's ugly, and it's not official. But and it should be bound. But we can get through with what we have, and I can definitely look elsewhere.
So the preservation grant would still get it in this fiscal year, it just wouldn't be like the beginning of the year, the timing of it, right?
No, actually, it would be for next fiscal because this fiscal I've already had, it's already encumbered. And the project actually, that's the thing we just signed for the maps.
But that's in this current fiscal year.
Yes, yeah.
Right, so if we cut this out of next
Oh,
year's
right, I'm
budget,
sorry, yes.
your preservation grant would be in that same fiscal year, correct? So you wouldn't
Yes,
be
I'm
doing
sorry,
without
I'm
a
not-
year. Okay, just using a different source. So I appreciate that, and I'll take that $3,500 cut.
Jeez,
Awesome, that means we're
thought
done,
about
right?
it.
Right.
Thank
That's it.
you.
Nothing else, nothing else.
Nothing else
needed.
to cut. We cut a mechanic and $3,500 in tax. We're good to go.
Awesome.
Okay, so just recap, what's the
Yes.
request going to be for the line item? For purchase services, Robin, what's your budget request?
Okay, so we pulled it up to 2545, so it should go back down to 17,020.
Got it.
17,020.
All right, folks. Seeing that, we've got plenty more to discuss. We have about an hour next week prior to our regular scheduled meeting. If we do not have a full agenda, would you be opposed to having some continued discussions at our regular meeting after?
Sure.
Sounds good to me.
All right, I'll take a look. Excuse me. Missed a day and you feel like you missed a lot. So we'll take a look to see what we have on the agenda for next week. And so we'll meet at 5:30 and then again at 7:30 for our regular meeting. And seeing no other business on our agenda, I would move to adjourn at 7 p.m.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Any discussion? Excuse me. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a nice night,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you as well, Donna.